Welcome back to another episode of the Beyond the Arc podcast. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about everything to do with the draft lottery, as of course, it just happened today. So if you do enjoy this content, do me a huge favor, smash the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, comment down below on your favorite riser of this NBA draft lottery and faller as well. So without further ado, let's jump right on into this. So, couple winners, couple losers, of course, when it comes to the draft lottery. Let's start with one of the biggest losers of the draft lottery. It is very unfortunate that the Sacramento Kings fell to 7, right? They're a team that they were bad all year. They were so bad and they weren't even trying to lose. They weren't one of these teams like the Wizards or the Jazz who actually bought at the deadline. They should have sold at the deadline, but they didn't. In all actuality, they were just bad all year. They're a team that genuinely deserved to have a top pick, right? But, of course, King's curse is there. They fell to 7. They're a team, though, at 7, right? I have all the player rankings right here. Right around 7, you're looking at Kingston Flemings, the guard from Houston, the young kid. Now, in the tournament, he didn't impress me too much. His youth definitely showed. And of course, this kid was a freshman, so he's going to need time to learn. Now, in all actuality, if there's one thing in the past that the Kings have been able to do, it's draft a guard, right? Of course, they drafted Tyrese Halliburton. They drafted De'Aaron Fox. They drafted Davion Mitchell, who, yeah, he's not a heavy home hitter, but he's still a hit, a decent role player in the NBA. In the past, they drafted Isaiah Thomas. They drafted Tyreek Evans. They've been able to draft guards. It's been when they swing for the fence on the big man or the superstar, that's when it misses. But they can draft a guard, and they've shown that. So being able to have a guy like Kingston Flemings kind of fall into your lap, or even if you prefer, a Mikal Brown Jr. or a Nate Ament or something like that, you might be able to turn that into something. But, of course, they're a team, I also think their best bet is to trade up into the draft. Whether that's going and talking to the Clippers at 5, the Grizzlies at 3, because realistically, if the Wizards at 1 take AJ, and then the Jazz at 2 take Peterson, or vice versa, however it ends up being, most likely number 3 is going to be the Boozer Boy. And does he really fit with Zach Edey long term? Does Cam Boozer and his play style fit? Now, you can say, well, the Grizzlies just take best player available because it's that kind of draft, and then you figure it out later. I'm just kind of concerned that later is going to happen, and then they're going to have to make a decision between one of them. Now, of course, Memphis is in a total scrap reload mode, rebuild mode, to where they're not in a rush to. They have so many picks coming up with the whole Desmond Bane trade, the Jaren Jackson Jr. trade, and then, of course, if they decide to move off Ja, which we all assume in the offseason that's going to happen, what they'll accumulate from that as well. But I think that there can be some action here with Memphis at 3, because, yeah, if they're like, well, we already have Edey, we would prefer maybe Caleb Wilson here, or even, Darius Acuff here, especially if they decide to move off Ja. But there's a world where they, draft here at 3 and then trade back into the first round, and I'll get to them in just a second. But let's stick on the Kings. The Kings are a team that, yes, I think they should be calling every single team here and being like, hey, obviously, you're probably not going to pry 1 or 2 off of the Wizards or the Jazz, because they desperately need that superstar talent there. Where I think there's wiggle room is 3. I think Chicago ends up drafting at 4. But 5, you have a shot at the Grizzlies and you have a shot at the Clippers. And Sabonis is here. Sabonis is probably one of the only valuable pieces on this roster. Sabonis, and maybe you can convince somebody of Keegan Murray, but I think at this point he makes too much money and is not as productive as you need him to be. I mean, he is this Nicholas Batum-esque He is a Robert Covington-esque, and to be making as much money as he is he really worth that value? Now, like I said, maybe you can convince somebody of that. But at the moment, I personally wouldn't bite on Keegan Murray. But I could see a team like the Clippers, who are kind of in this transition period, but they're almost in, of course they have Darius Garland and Kawhi. So maybe they say, hey, like Keegan Murray would be a good fit, or even Sabonis would be a good fit. We'll make something happen here. So we're not particularly super involved in this draft at number 5, because realistically that's like a cuff. But maybe they would be interested in moving back, or even Sacramento just drafts at 7 and trades up to 5 and drafts at 5. But let's do a little bit of a mock. I don't want to get too involved in that, because of course these next few weeks you're going to hear so many different mock drafts. But the beginning, of course, I see the Wizards. I think they'll end up taking AJ. I think him, Trae Young. Like, I was thinking, do they take Darren Peterson here? And I don't think so, because of Trae Young. I think you take AJ and you have this lineup of Sarr, Davis, AJ. Your 2 is like a Trey Johnson or whoever, Bub Carrington, and then you have Trae Young. And it's a very long defensive lineup around Trae Young. And AJ has proved he can score. So there's a secondary scorer. Of course, Anthony Davis, as long as... Now, the thing about Anthony Davis is health, of course. But I think even more than that, being such a good mentor for Alex Sarr, like, it's all green light right now for Washington, I think. They're one of the best case scenarios. And they're a team that literally tanked on purpose. That the NBA is about to change rules in order to combat what they just did, where they were buyers at the deadline and yet lost games on purpose. I mean, you could say what you want, but they did. The Wizards, though, have a bright future, of course. Trae Young's not super old. Anthony Davis, of course, is a little older, but I think him as a mentor for Alex Sarr is huge. Because realistically, like, Alex Sarr could become an Anthony Davis-esque, where second option, third option on a championship contention team, defensive anchor. I could see that. Now, Utah's going to go Darren Peterson or AJ, whichever one doesn't get drafted there, but I think it'll be Darren Peterson. And not that I'm concerned with Utah, but last year they went Ace Bailey. And Ace Bailey, of course, was like, don't draft me, that whole 9 yards. Seems like he's picked things up, but it concerns me having toxic locker rooms, because that's when you have the issues of like Kevin Durant with the burner and then just the locker room collapsing. And that makes your play on the court a lot worse. Now, in all actuality, this is an extremely young team, and I think they can figure it out. But I don't love the idea of somebody that's load managing in college. Like, I don't, we want to see you play. Because personally, I love Darren Peterson's game, like watching the little flashes and everything, but still, I feel like I didn't see enough. And that's concerning. And I don't think he's got injury issues like everyone. There's kind of that dynamic behind him. I think it's just, hey, I don't want to get hurt, so I'm not going to play. I'm going to load manage, make the league, then you'll see. And I don't love that, because that reminds me of like James Wiseman. James Wiseman didn't play in college, but 20 minutes or something like that? Played a couple games. So realistically, I'm somebody that I'm like, I might pass on that. But of course, Utah kind of has to, because they have to take Peterson, because the Boozer Boy is not going to fit with your three-headed big-headed monster unless you make some big deal trade, I guess. But I think they go Darren Peterson. At number 3, like I said, that's where I think things get a little interesting, because does the Boozer Boy, like, do the Grizzlies feel as if Cam Boozer is a part of a future with Zach Edey? And realistically, do you think Zach Edey is valued high enough to where it would make a difference in drafting Cam Boozer? Because if you don't believe that the two of them will fit, then you shouldn't take him. Unless you see a world where in the future you trade Zach Edey for value. But I just think right now they take best player available. That'll be Cam Boozer. At number 4, I think the organization of the Bulls has come out and said that they want to do the slap program, where they're only going to take guys that fit that mold of like long, athletic wings, pretty much, or long, athletic players. So I think that's perfect for them to land at 4, because that's perfect for Caleb Wilson. They already got 1 billion guards on this roster, and you have Matas Buzelis. So I think you go and you take Caleb Wilson, who I think he reminds me a lot of like a Kevin Garnett-esque, right? Evan Mobley-esque, where he's like this long wing that can defend, he can score the ball. The third level scoring, the 3 ball's not as there as you may have liked it to be, but that can develop, of course. But yeah, I like that a lot for Chicago. And then, like I said, this is where things get interesting too, because I think the Clippers are in a spot at 5 where they could look to trade back. Because at 5, right now on ESPN, Keaton Wagler, the guard, is projected to be the 5th best player here. He's a 6'6" guard. Theoretically, you could pair him as the 2 guard alongside Darius Garland and Kawhi. But do you really see, like, is he the best player there? Because in my opinion, 5th best player is Darius Acuff. And I'm not taking Darius Acuff if I'm the Clippers. That's where I would potentially look to trade out of that pick. I think this year's draft, you can convince teams like Sacramento, like Brooklyn, like Dallas, Milwaukee, right? Not take Dallas out of that, actually. So we'll say Brooklyn, Sacramento, Milwaukee. I think Miami might be in that situation, or teams that are kind of desperate to make something happen, right? Tell me not Brooklyn obviously is desperate. They need a hitter, because like they had 5 first-round picks last year, and it doesn't look like any of those guys are going to be superstars. So this year, you kind of have to hit, especially a GM. To save your job, you kind of have to hit on a pick. So do you want to be at 6? Or do you want to go ahead and take Darius Acuff guaranteed at 5? And then the Clippers, it's a little swap right there. Maybe Brooklyn throws a little something extra on it. Like nothing crazy because you're only moving up 1 spot, or Sacramento. I think the Clippers could convince Sacramento to be like, yo, this year you have to get something, or you're out the door. You're going to be fired. Like, you're going to be moving cities. Atlanta is a team that I think they're a team that's just best player available at 8 kind of thing. They've got a bright future ahead of them. Jalen Johnson. If it were to go as it falls right now, you'd be looking at Nate Ament. And I kind of like that for them. I wish that there was a center more available. I could see them being a team that might, trade back and go and trade back just to get a center. But this is a very weak center class. This is like the first center comes at pick like 11 or something like that, or ranking 11. No, sorry, it's pick 14, and it's Adai Mara, which, I think this class is going to have some diamonds, because typically when it's so front heavy, that's when you get the diamonds later. That's when you get the Tyrese Halliburtons at 13 or something like that, right? That draft, the COVID draft with LaMelo, James Wiseman, Anthony Edwards as the top headers, and then everyone else said there was a line and it fell off. Well, Tyrese Halliburton was down the road at 13 or somewhere right 11 or 13 or something. So that's where I can see a guy like, I could see a Thomas Haw, or who knows about Kareem Lopez, because like he looks like there's some flashes where I see him and I'm like, damn, like that guy could be something in the league. But then you just don't know, because he didn't play college ball. Drafting outside of college can be a little tough. Now, of course, these days it seems like the metrics and everything that they've been able to develop, and actually on the scouting reports are actually able to kind of draft better for foreign players. But it's still a risk, of course. It's still a risk to draft any one of these guys. I think risky players to draft is Kingston Flemings. I really think that he could be something in the league for sure, but it's going to have to be right situation. It's going to take a few years to develop because he's so young. Like that, and that proved, the tournament really showed me that. I think the tournament showed me, it shows a lot, right? It showed Cade Cunningham on Oklahoma State, like, yeah, this dude is legit. It showed, like, you know, the Boozer twin, like, yep, one of them's ready. The other one, he could use another year because kind of choked the game for them, made a costly play, right? Darius Acup, it's like, oh, he rose up the draft board and it was ready, and everyone was like, oh, yep, this guy is legit. Now, I'm surprised that they got him at 6 because genuinely, I think that he's this, like, this Derrick Rose, Allen Iverson-esque. Now, of course, that's a little scary in today's league because little undersized. I mean, Darius Acuff is 6'3", so not too undersized for a point guard, but still, there's some size issues. I just think that there is a world where Darius Acuff could have this superstardom about him. And that's what worries me. If you're a Sacramento and you're drafting at 7, are you allowing Brooklyn to just Darius to fall into his lap? Right? Are you allowing that? I don't know if I am. If I am Sacramento, like teams that need a point guard, Brooklyn could obviously use him. Sacramento could use him. Dallas could really use him. I would love to see Darius Acuff go to Dallas. Genuinely, I would love Dallas to be like, hey, let's just go get our guy and trade up, talk to the Clippers. Yo, do you want a Daniel Gafford package? Do you want, you know, obviously you're not giving up Cooper Flag, but is there something in the works where you can convince them like, hey, look, you got Kawhi still. Kawhi is chilling in there. Why don't you give him some help? We give up Kyrie. Like, we might be able to make something happen. I think LA is in the prime spot. They got the perfect thing. Like, they're obviously their pick. It went to them. They took the gamble and it worked. They traded Zubac to the Pacers and it worked. Right? And then they're at 5 and they're in a prime spot. And the perfect thing is they're not at 6, 7, 8, 9 like they could have been. But they're at 5. That's a prime spot for the Clippers. They could do so much. They could draft here. They could, you know, of course, trade out of this spot. Some other losers, I do think that, like, you could say, of course, Brooklyn being a loser, but like Miami was a team that probably could have used a little luck on their side to jump in there. I think Miami's kind of in no man's land. They're in this spot that I don't like at all. They don't have any super exciting young talent, right? Like Jaime Jaquez kind of showed his cards in the first year and he was cool, but now, like, not really super cool. Like, he's solid, but I think he'd probably be better on like a hyper competitive team where he could be a backup, you know, 3-4-ish. I think, but they're in this bad spot. They're a team that I don't like the direction at all. Like, do you just trade Bam? Do you trade Tyler Hero? Like, what's the value of Tyler Hero? Do people even want him? It's similar to Trae Young. You might have to bite the bullet and eat dead cap on Tyler Hero, who at one point was your starting guard for a championship contention team. That's what's crazy is, like, they do lack a superstar. So I do think that they're in a position where, like, Houston, for example, there's talks that Kevin Durant might be out the door. And if I'm Miami, I don't want Kevin Durant. But that's me personally. If Miami might need a Kevin Durant, right? Tyler Hero, KD, Bam Adebayo. And then, yeah, you package some of the young guys and go over there. I don't think they would have the most impressive package for Kevin Durant if I'm Houston, but if that's the only package on the table and it's the best of the only available, then maybe you convince yourself, hey, like, let's just take what we can get. Let's get off of Kevin Durant because it's been toxic. The locker room was a mess. We need a guard, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. But yeah, okay. Let's just go down this list. Of course, 1 Wizards, 2 Utah, 3 Grizzlies, 4 Bulls, 5 Clippers, 6 Brooklyn, 7 Sacramento, 8 Atlanta, 9 Dallas, 10 Milwaukee, 11 Golden State, 12 Oklahoma City, 13 Miami, 14 Charlotte. So, Charlotte, of course, could use a center. If like Ade Mara falls to them, that 7'3" boy, I mean, I don't know if I like him too much. Genuinely, let's look at the Hornets roster. Let's just look at the Hornets depth chart and figure this out, because I know that they need a center. Realistically, if they could go get a Miles Turner, if they could, something like that, I think that they could use a power forward. I know Miles Bridges is cool, but like, as far as like his game is all right. Off the court stuff, I don't rock with. But as far as like his game, like, he's solid. But I think if you could get Yaxel Lendenberg, I think he's a sleeper in this draft. Same thing with Kareem Lopez. I just talked about him. I don't really know if they need somebody of his play style because he seems more of an offensive kind of player, but I haven't done too much research on Kareem Lopez himself. But this is a very, like, there's a lot of guards at the top of this draft. I mean, like, 2, obviously Darren Peterson, Keaton Wagler, Darius Acuff, Kingston Flemings, Mikhail Brown, Braden Burries. You have LeBaron Fillin, like back-to-back 18, 19, Braylon Mullins, Christian Anderson. Like, there's a lot of guards in this draft. Not a lot of center play. Like I said, this is just a draft where if you need a center, maybe you just hold off. And so the Hornets, they probably just take best player available, something that kind of fits their mold. I wouldn't be surprised if they're a team that just kind of like ends up flipping something, you know, maybe using their pick this year. Maybe they take a swing. Maybe they're a team that takes a swing, not like a Kevin Durant swing, not a Giannis swing, of course not. But you want to keep the main 3 in LaMelo Ball, Con Knipple, Brandon Miller. So then it makes you think, all right, well, what can we do? We can talk to Milwaukee about Miles Turner. We can talk to the Magic maybe about Wendell Carter if they're not feeling it over there. He's a little undersized, but maybe you can convince yourself. I think Diabate just needs a little time. And maybe putting him as a backup big is the perfect thing for him. Right? I think you could talk to Toronto about Jakob Poeltl. Maybe Toronto is a team that looks to move up. And not saying that you would give up the 14th overall pick for Jakob Poeltl, but I'm saying he could provide solid minutes for this team. And he's a player that would be relatively cheap, as in like package wise. Yes, he makes a decent amount of money, but I think if they went into this saying, like, let's pull up Toronto, just for, if we're already pulling up the Raptors depth chart, if we're already pulling up the Hornets and we're talking about this trade, and a lot of this podcast, I do typically just kind of go off on random tangents and I just spiral about ideas because I'm like, oh, that actually makes a lot of sense for them to go get a Jakob Poeltl. And then, you know, attaching that, this would be the idea that Toronto calls Charlotte and says, hey, we want to move up to 14. So we'll give you, what does that leave them? They're at like, I don't know, freaking 20 something. So we'll give you that. We'll give you Jakob Poeltl. And then we'll give you, I don't know, Jamal Shed. And because Jamal Shed, I think, is a serviceable backup point guard in the league. Right now, you got Kobe White. Kobe White, I think he's more of a 2, in my opinion. I mean, Trey Mann's still here, too. You don't really need that. So I guess that probably wouldn't work too much. Toronto don't really got a whole lot of... I mean, they don't want Grady Dick because they got Con Knipple. They're not giving up Colin Murray-Boyles. Yeah, so I guess that trade just kind of falls through in that scenario. But I could see Charlotte as a team that just moves back, Or they try and move up. And I mean, what would it take for, I don't know, like the Clippers? What would the Hornets have that the Clippers would want to get up to 5? That's where you're looking at, like, that's going to be tough. So they obviously give up 14. You'd have to give up like 14. Miles Bridges. No, you don't want to do that. God, that's terrible. But anyways, let's just move on from Charlotte. They're a team that probably will draft, but I could see them moving back. Oklahoma City, of course, drafting at 12. They're just a team that the rich keep getting richer. They're probably going to go back to the NBA Finals, right? They're about to sweep the Lakers. Maybe the Lakers get a game, but and they're doing it all without J-Dub. And they get the 12th overall pick in this year's draft. That's crazy. Now, if I'm Oklahoma City and I don't win this year's finals, one, I mean, obviously you had the injury issues with J-Dub. But two, maybe you look to one of these teams that is looking to move around or has a not disgruntled star, but just a player, because I don't think they would go and get a star, right? I don't think they're going and getting Giannis. I don't think they're going and getting, KD. I think that they're going to go and get players that kind of fit what they need, right? They go talk to New Orleans. New Orleans doesn't have a first round pick because they traded it to Atlanta for the whole Derek Queen. So I think what you do is you say, hey, New Orleans, you need a first round pick. We want Herb Jones. We want Trey Murphy. What can we do here? This is one of the better drafts. You want to be a part of this. You don't want to keep running Zion and Derek Queen and SV Missy. Like, do you want that lineup? That's just not going to work. So how about you trade up to 12? You can draft a guy like, you can go get one of these plethora of guards. You go get, I don't know, you go get like a LeBaron Fillin Jr. Or even if like a Mikal Brown Jr. falls or something, because somebody always falls. And then you go from there, right? Tyrese Halliburton fell in the draft. So that's something I think that Oklahoma City could look to do, is trade out of their pick. I think there could be a lot of movement with this year's draft because there's a lot of teams that don't need much, right? Like, realistically, Oklahoma City doesn't need a whole lot. The Warriors, not on their timeline. They're on a Curry is 38. We need to win now. So they're not going to be drafting some rookie. I mean, I would hope not. I would hope they would at least try to explore the option of trading him away or trading that pick away. Like I said, there's teams that are stuck in no man's land. Miami, they might want to move up, or Milwaukee's got to make something happen here because who knows what's up with Giannis. I would say we watch for Milwaukee because I think that there's a world where I've been wanting to say that they will move off Giannis, and I think at this point that they should, and I've talked about that, and I think that we've beat that into a dead horse. But realistically, I think they're a team that should look to get up into the, the early part of this draft. And if it takes trading Giannis and scrapping everything, that's maybe what you do. Now, if you're Portland, you're like, yeah, bro, trade Giannis because we have y'all's picks. We want y'all to be bad. So, anyways, I'm getting off topic. Oklahoma City, I think, is a team that could look to move out. Charlotte, a team that I think could look to move out, just to accumulate assets or go get a center. Miami has to make something happen. But all right, so now we have the NBA draft order, picks 1 through 60. So, of course, right after Charlotte, Chicago's at 15. Right, Chicago having 2 first-round picks here, I think that's pretty big for them because they're a team that needs just talent, right? They need talent, and they have a mantra that they want to follow. It's the slap. It's the long, athletic players that they want. So, right, they're at 15. So 15th best player right now on ranking. Now, of course, this is going to fluctuate quite a lot. it's Steinbach for Washington. Some 6'11", 220 forward. So power forward center for y'all. You kind of need a center. But of course, if you're at 4 and you take Caleb Wilson, you probably look to one of, somebody on the little like 2-3 range, a guard or a forward. At 15, we're looking at Chicago. 16, Phoenix. So, wait. 17, Philly, right? Orlando's at 18. Toronto, 19. Atlanta, 20. So Atlanta has 2 first-round picks too. I think that could be big for them as well. Minnesota, 21. That's sneaky. Because like Minnesota at 21. Now it says 2 Detroit. So let me double check. NBA draft order. So full draft order. Okay, tankathon.com. Let's pull that. Okay. All right, I've got it right here. So Memphis is at 16. Oklahoma City's at 17. Charlotte at 18. So Charlotte, 2 first-round picks. Kind of solid. So that's what I'm saying is like, could Charlotte look to go to Milwaukee and be like, look, we've got 2 first-round picks. They're not giving up 2 first-round picks for Miles Turner. No shot. But could they be like, hey, Miles Turner, or I'm trying to think of other like big name centers out there. Maybe if the Boozer Boy gets drafted, then Charlotte calls Memphis about Zach Edey. I think there's a possibility there. I'm just kind of spitballing things. San Antonio, of course, has a pick at 20. Minnesota, 28. Boston, 27. End of the first round is whatever. But yeah, let's see. Chicago, like I said, they have 2 first-round picks this year. And then they have 2 second-round picks. So they're a team that could have one of those summer league teams, just really exciting because they got like 4 or 5 guys on it. Like when the Lakers had, Brandon Ingram, they had Kyle Kuzma. I think they had Lonzo on that roster too. Like they just had ballers on that roster. Could this be Chicago this year, where they have 4 picks in the top 60 that, who knows, Washington, another team with multiple picks in this draft, 1 first round and then looks like 2 in the second round. Dallas, of course, they're a team to watch, 2 first round picks. They got a second round pick here as well. But a lot of movement. You know what's so funny is there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 second round picks that are genuinely to the team that it should be. Like as in like Sacramento has its own second round pick this year. There's only 6. And all the other 24 were traded at one point. 31, New York from Washington. 32, Memphis from Indiana. 35, San Antonio from Utah. That's just, it's funny that it's like that. The bottom end of the first round is like that too, where 28 through 30 is all traded. 20 through 23 all traded. Like this year, I think there was just a clear point of like, hey, the top of this draft, keep your pick. If not, get out of there. Use it. And of course, a lot of these times where you're San Antonio, you're Minnesota, or you're Houston, you'll probably trade your pick a lot of the time because you're in a winning now mode. So you use that to go gain an asset. And that's what I was saying about Charlotte. They're a team that made the play-in, right? So now it's like, okay, you made it. Now let's have you guys go do something about it next year. So this upcoming season, right? Now you need to just build on that momentum. It was a proud season for y'all. Let's keep going. Let's go get a guy, trade that first round pick, or like I said, they got multiple picks in this draft, so they can make something happen here. Actually, it looks like they only have the 1. They're at 14, and then they traded everything else. So they're at 14. They're a team that should just look to trade out. You already have your young core. So now bring in some vets, balance it all out, right? Because New York, if they flame out, could potentially look to trade Cat. the Cavs, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen. There's some bigs right there. There's 3 bigs I just named. And then I said earlier, Miles Turner, Wendell Carter. Like, Washington's not trading a big. Utah, we don't know about Walker Kessler. So that could be huge for the Hornets as well. Memphis, of course, like I said, if they draft Cam Boozer, do they even consider trading Zach Edey if they don't feel as if both of them will fit together? I don't think so, but who knows? For the right price, maybe you can figure something out there. The Clippers, Sacramento with Sabonis. Sabonis over in Charlotte. I mean, Sacramento needs all the young talent that they can get. You're telling me Sacramento might not want like Trey Mann? Might not want like Trey Mann, 14, and, you know, just to make the money match, like Miles Bridges? Like, you get youth. If you're Sacramento, you get off Sabonis. Of course, there would be some other pieces in there, right? Probably next year's first as well if you're Charlotte and you're buying in. Charlotte does have 2 first-round picks. I'm sorry. So what if they traded both 14 and 18 to Sacramento? And then that includes, let's say, Miles Bridges to make the money match, and then Trey Mann to Sacramento for Sabonis. Does Sacramento see diamonds in the rough later in the draft at 14 and 18, right? Do they like guys like the center from Michigan, or at 18, Braylon Mullins? I mean, there's opportunity here. Like I said, they can draft guards really well, and this has a lot of guards in this draft. So could they potentially do something here? I could definitely see that. Overall, though, now let's kind of switch gears. Let's talk about the NBA playoffs, because, of course, I hadn't done a video on this since, of course, the Celtics, they got knocked out. It is what it is. It happened. It was a little unfortunate how it happened, but you know, overall, can't be mad at the year. Jason Tatum hurt. He came back, and then it just gives him more time to just recover. So I'm okay with it, with us flaming out early. That's fine. It sucks that we're the only team in NBA history to blow 3-1 to a 7 seed. Sure, whatever. But it's bound to happen to one team eventually. We lead the league in NBA championships. We're gonna flame out here or there, right? And then, of course, we won a championship in, 22, 23, something like that. Before that, we won a chip in 08. So people that can try and crap on the Celtics, like, I mean, come on, man. We got a great duo. They're young, 27, 28 years old. We got a great roster. Derek White. You know, of course, Peyton Pritchard's here. We got to make a little adjustment at the center position, but we'll figure that out. Next series, of course, now the Knicks just beat the 76ers 4-0 sweep, so that sucks a little bit if you're a Celtics fan too, because, of course, the team that came back then got swept by the Knicks. The Knicks look dangerous. That's what I'll say, is like the Knicks look very scary. And I don't know. They're on some momentum right now. Of course, the Detroit-Cleveland has a lot of game left here. And New York, I think they're a team that it's unfortunate that there is a lot of game left. Like, this series potentially could go to 7 because it's 2-1 Detroit over Cleveland as we speak today on Mother's Day. But with that series being 2-1, you're like, well, if this series goes 7, that gives the Knicks so much time to just kind of chill. And I don't think that's good because they're riding on so much momentum. And I predict that the Detroit Pistons will come out of this. I think initially I thought the Cavs, but in round 1, but the Cavs just don't look good at all. Like, in my opinion, they're just looking and against a team that offensively can't perform that well. Like, they're allowing Detroit to just score. And these games are relatively close each game, sure. But whatever team I think ends up losing to the Knicks, I think the Knicks go to the finals this year. And then the Knicks would play either what I assume to be OKC or potentially between Minnesota and San Antonio, but probably San Antonio because, I mean, Victor Wembanyama gets ejected 12 minutes into this game. I think ends up being New York versus Oklahoma City in the finals. right? That's a matchup that a lot of defense versus a lot of offense. I'm going to be excited to watch that. That's going to be a great series. I think that series could be better than the Pistons. Than the Pacers Thunder series from last year, where the only issue I could see happening is, like it always happens every year, the Knicks run out of gas. I hope it doesn't happen because I want a great finals, but something's telling me that they're about to. Whatever team plays New York, it's going to be a tough series no matter what. But before that, in the Eastern Conference Finals, if it's Detroit playing New York, they're going to get beat up, right? They're going to beat each other up. They're both very physical teams. They both play extremely physical. They play very similarly, right? They rely heavily on their guard. They both have decent bigs. With Jalen Duren, I know he's not having a great playoff series or playoff year, but he's still a potential All-NBA caliber center. Let's be honest here. And he's still got some in the tank. And maybe against New York, he bounces back. But anyways, I don't want to get ahead of myself with Detroit. I just really like what I'm seeing out of Cade Cunningham. His stock, of course, going up. He is one of the best point guards in the NBA. He is probably he's got to be a top 5 point guard in the NBA, right? Curry, of course, whether or not you consider Luka, then you have like Shea, and then you've got, of course, Cade is like right there. Jalen Brunson as well. Like you can 1A, 1B them kind of thing. Overall, a lot of good teams here. A lot of great playoff games. There's been some unfortunate blowouts, right? The Lakers have kind of gotten... It's been a lot. The score sheet shows it a lot closer than it really feels like. Lakers just always are fighting this uphill battle. The Spurs series, though, that one's actually probably one of the best series here because Minnesota ain't backing down, and I like that. I thought with Anthony Edwards' injury and with Dante DiVincenzo's injury that they were going to kind of just flame out. But, and then same with Detroit and Cleveland. There's been some bad games, but of course... that last game that Cleveland won, that was a pretty heavy hitter. So you got to like to see that. Overall, I think that we've had a great playoff series this year, playoff year. And then as far as the NBA lottery goes, big winner, of course, the Washington Wizards, the Clippers as well. Big loser, Sacramento, Brooklyn. And then I think like Miami. So, all right, guys. Well, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Beyond the Arc podcast. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.